Well, good afternoon, guys. This afternoon, we're not going to be working on trucks or nothing like that. I got a project that's a little different. I'm going to be working on a boat. It's a 120 Johnson. Well, let me show you guys. I'm going to be working on this little boat here. Like I said, it's a 120 horsepower Johnson. On this one, we cleaned out the carburetors a while back, but owner says that he can't keep it at idle. He has to rev it up a bit, so something might have got pinched or needs a little adjustment. So let me go ahead and straighten this sucker out, get that cover off of it, and start pulling those carbs off. I'm just going to go ahead and pull them off, clean them out, make sure that everything is on there correctly, and put it back together, start it up, and hopefully we'll be able to adjust this little sucker and get it up and running the way it's supposed to, so these guys can go fishing. Let me go ahead and start by tearing this one apart. Well guys, this here's a 120. It's got a little 4-cylinder and carbs are over here in front. So we're going to remove this cover here. Let me get on the other side. The sun's glare is a little too bright. There we go. We're going to go ahead and remove this cover, get to those carbs. Like I said, I'm just going to go through the whole thing, just pull them off, clean them out, and reinstall them. So they already did the little repair kit on it. Let's hope that none of the little O-rings, stuff like that, got pinched or broken, but we'll see what happens. Let me go ahead and get started. Well, let's go ahead and start by removing all those little 10mm bolts that go around that cover and pull that little cover label with that B4. So let me get that on time lapse. It's got like 4 on this side, 4 on that side, and that's got 2 in the bottom, I believe. So let me just take that cover off. Well guys, there are your 4 carburetors. I'm going to go ahead and remove them, like I said. They don't, gaskets look new on them. Shoot, they don't look bad, so I'm guessing it was just a adjustment of the float. Maybe they left the float a little too high, running a little rich. But let me go ahead and take them apart one at a time. Take it off, tear it apart, and check them out and see what the hell's going on with these. This one looks a little dry. These are somewhat moist, so I really can't see much from here. So let me go ahead and just tear it apart, and we'll see how it goes. On these, it's got 10mm bolts here and here, and then of course it's got one fuel line or feed line. This is the one right here. I know you guys can't see it. It's held on by a zip tie. So let me go ahead and pop the sucker off and see what it looks like. I'm gonna take the bottom one off. The bottom one looks dry. Gasket on the inside looks fine, not broken. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this sucker off and see what the float level's like. It might be running dry, maybe the float is stuck, not getting any fuel. No fuel. Yeah, there's a little bit of fuel. There's a little bit of fuel. So let's see what's up with this one, guys. Let me get my screwdriver set and stuff like that, and I'll be right back. Well, guys, let's take that little fuel bowl off. There's some fuel coming out, so well, let's see what we find. Five little screws holding it in place, and there's that. Hold this down. There we go. There you go, flat. I don't have the little cardboard little T-square to measure them, but they're supposed to be completely straight, flat. That one looks flat to me, so this is going to be all right. I'm going to go ahead and blow out these jets, make sure they're clean before I put the sucker back together. Let me take this little side cover plate off. Nothing, it's just a whole bunch of little ports. The gasket looks intact. Everything on this little carburetor looks alright. I'm going to go ahead and run a little wire through that little jet, make sure they're clean, blow some air through them, make sure that air goes through it, and then put this sucker back together. I'm going to do the same for all four. Then we'll go ahead and start this sucker up and see what it's going to do now. So let me go ahead and blow these out real quick, and I'll be right back. Well, guys, jets blew them out. I mean, everything is clean. There's no debris blocking the ports or nothing like that. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this. I'm not much of a boat guy, but I figured I'd try fixing this one. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if it works. Reassemble the side little plate. And if this one was running okay, then the other three are running a little rich. That could be the problem there. So I'm just going to go ahead and take all the carburetors off, clean them all out, reinstall them, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully everything functions the way it's supposed to. I feel good about this one, guys. I think it's going to work. I mean, boat was starting, running, everything. The only thing it didn't have was had a very rough idle, so they had to keep the throttle up just a bit. So yeah, I'm going to assume that those carburetors are pushing in a little too much fuel, and it's causing it, it's giving it a real rough idle and not letting it run correctly. So I have a good feeling about this one. We'll find out in a bit. Let me get the sucker back on there and take the next one off. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest on time lapse, guys. Well, guys, this hose on this carburetor is way too long and it's pinching right here, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut it back just a bit and get it on there so that I can get rid of this kink right here. Let me give me a razor blade and get that done. I need to cut just a little bit more. There we go. Fuel line back in place. There. And get the carburetor and bolt it back up. Before we do that, make sure the gasket is in place, and you don't want to pinch that little sucker. So that's that. Get those bolts back in there. And yep, that hose is now completely out of the way. It's not binding or no kinks, so I'm not saying that was the issue, but I'm glad we saw it and took care of it. That's that one. Now let's get our third one. We're almost there, guys. We should be starting this sucker up in the next 30, 40 minutes, give or take. I just got to check all of them. I just want to make sure that the floats are pretty much the same. Well, guys, all four carburetors are back on there. Check the float levels. I mean, whichever needles seem to be somewhat clogged, I used compressed air, blew air through it, ran a little wire through the jet. Everything was fine. So I kind of somewhat adjusted the float level. I mean, this one was a little high. These were pretty much somewhat close. I mean, this one looked dry, like if no fuel was getting to it. had a pinch hose, so that could have been the issue right there. Restricted fuel flowing through the carb would make this engine run, I mean, somewhat shitty. So I'm gonna assume that that was an issue. I'm gonna go ahead and put the cover back on it and get those buffs on there and start this sucker up. And well, I mean, I don't know if it's fixed, but I hope it is. I mean, these guys want to go fishing. I'm gonna try and see if I can get them their boat back later on today so that they can. So let's see how it goes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get these covers back on there, and I'll be back with you guys once I'm ready to try and crank it over. Well guys, got this little thing put back together. It's got, oh well, I did the first startup, dude, and I didn't record, so sorry about that guys. But it's got like a little rough little idle, and seems to be running just a little bit rich, or not rich, but the RPM's a little higher than what I would like it to be at. But since it was running a little rough, it was that hose on that bottom carb, the one that didn't have any fuel, that looked kind of dry. Well, the reason for it, I'm thinking, is the zip tie on the hose was no longer creating a good seal. I mean, you prime the little primer pump, and fuel would just kind of squirt off of out from the little hose. I had to cut that zip tie and add like a little hose clamp, and no more leaks. Now the engine starts up, idles a little high for what I would like, but it idles. And well, since it was running a little rich, the guys did use it for a couple of days or a few times. Those spark plugs might be somewhat a little fouled out, so I really can't adjust anything until we take it out into the water and run it. And well, I'll go ahead and make those final adjustments there. Right now the RPMs are like at 1100. It jumps between 1000 and 1100, but it starts up on it by itself, runs without idling up, stutters a little bit, but like I said, I mean, they ran it a few times. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that, and we'll test it out once we get it in the water. Well guys, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this one off here. I do appreciate you guys watching. Like and comment.